Well, hello everybody. This is the Void Armada team where uh is our first episode of Sci-Fi and Tonic. We're just chatting about science fiction. We're joined by Ton, who's co-hosting the space, Dawn, who is on the Void Armada team, and Chip, the community manager for Void Armada. Together, the three of them make up the Void Armada team. I'm Toby Kurtz. I'm running social media for Void Armada. I'm part of the Modern People team, who you might know from Portal Heads. And so, yeah, we're just going to be chatting and chilling. Pour yourself a drink, and we're going to be talking about sci-fi. I think, Ton, you wanted to kick it off with the god of sci-fi, the human god of sci-fi, Isaac Asimov.
Yeah, that's right.
The beginning and the end of sci-fi right now.
Yeah. And by the way, it is really fresh because we have the series, the Apple series. So it is relevant again. It was always relevant, I suppose, the Foundation series. So just like a quick info about the series, which is actually, I think it brings an interesting perspective into Isaac Asimov's mind state, because he wrote the first book, The Foundation, on 1951, which is like 6 years after the end of the World War II. So it's surprisingly, it's been like 71 years, amazing. Like he thought of all of these things back then. I mean, you can, I think throughout the series, you can feel it a little bit because they're like tapes. Obviously he couldn't foresee things like digital media or whatever. So, there you have like this whole galaxy and like spaceships going one side of the galaxy to the other, but you have tapes. So, which is hilarious when you're reading it now. But I think, but the thing is, the whole series is, it is 6 books. 7 books actually. And he wrote the prequels much later. So the first one, Foundation, is 1951. The next one is Foundation and Empire. Second Foundation, Foundation's Edge, and Foundation and Earth. So he wrote, and then he wrote Prelude to Foundation and Forward to Foundation after that. So, and the whole series of, I'm not going to spoil the books, or, I don't want to go into too much detail about the books, because I want this to be relevant for people who haven't read the books or watched the series either. But the basic gist is that there is a guy called Harry Seldon, and he comes up with a concept called psychohistory, which is an amazing concept, because it is basically, what it means is that you can basically predict the future by looking at the past using mathematics. So this is an amazing thing. So the whole premise is actually kind of based on this, but at the end of the day, the whole series is kind of a space adventure as well. So it's just, I think this is the kind of thing that kickstarts the story. And the series, I loved it. I think it is visually stunning. It is kind of slow moving. It's quite slow paced, I suppose. And I think one thing I really liked about the show, like how they added a lot of nice stuff. For instance, the genetic line of the emperor isn't something that's in the books. So they actually made it up for the series, and it just brings an amazing perspective to the story. So it is pretty interesting. And obviously they changed the gender and this. Actually, a lot of characters' genders are changed. Like Salvor Hardin is actually a man. And I was actually thinking about this because it is pretty normal. He wrote this in the 50s, so all of his characters, the main characters, are all males. You don't have like strong female characters at all throughout the series. And if you go back to writers who like wrote their first book in like 60s, you'll see a similar thing. Like even Ursula L. Guin, she is a female science fiction writer. Her main characters were males at the beginning, and then like in the Wizard of Earth series, she wrote the book Tehanu, where you had a female protagonist. So it is kind of, it would be unusual to have a female front character at the time, I suppose. So don't look for that there. It's not there. Usually the main characters are male in these stories. But I think, anyhow, I want to actually go on to discuss this thing, the idea of psychohistory, for instance, because it is relevant now. I kind of looked into it, like if there is some kind of really science to it, that you can predict the future using math. And I actually found like university lectures, like a professor like teaching students, and they recorded it. And he actually talks about psychohistory in the sense of economics. So, which I found interesting, and this is quite relevant also with what we're doing here, like with the Void Armada. This is an NFT project, and the crypto, we know, everyone knows how volatile it is, and we're always every day looking at that. The signs is going to go up or go down. Actually, I want to start with discussion with that. Do you think one day is it going to be possible, like, to predict not future but predict the economy? Where it's going to go? I wonder if it's going to be possible. What do you think, guys?
Yeah. Prediction maybe it's the toughest word, I think, for this section, because prediction is too unpredictable for the future. So many data, so many parameters, so many hyperparameters in the world. Also in the crypto, everybody talking about predicting the best price or the best move in the time. But in history and what is the word, Tan?
Psychohistory.
Yes, psychohistory. Yes, psychohistory is a statistical thing, I think. It's just a blueprint of all the science fictions. So, in my opinion, really, it's just a statistical thing. And Asimov, at that times, he blueprints and draws all the sci-fi skeleton, I think it's hard to predict the future with the data, or maybe you could predict so many minor things in the story, or maybe in life, in a moment, maybe, but you couldn't predict all the things in just a bucket. I think it is like that.
I agree. By the way,
so
one thing to mention about psychohistory is that Harry Seldon mentions, like, it's never 100%. So it's
sure.
kind of similar in economics, right? This much better than I do, because you've been in crypto for a long time. So when you're looking at predictions, like all those like indicators, in TradeView, they're like, I was so surprised when I first saw it that there is so many. I thought there were like a bunch of them, like 4 or 5 of them, and there were like hundreds of them. Actually, probably they're like derived from each other. They're very similar with, few alterations, right?
Yeah. It's all based on the stories trading mechanics, and evolves periodically, and everybody generating new one. All the golden ratios and all the other stuff. Everything is works in a minor time. Everything works in a minor time, but in the total time, when you're looking at the total, it's not great. So it's like that in the psychohistory. Maybe millions of data, if we give millions data to the algorithm, and then it predicts some things, but it's not possibly works. And it might be burn out all the future.
Yeah, I suppose so. That's right. And by the way, of course, when Harry Seldon talks about, or Isaac Asimov talks about psychohistory, one important thing that underlined is that it only predicts humans en masse. So that means that, it doesn't predict what's like tiny individuals do. It will predict the future. I mean, you can say probably anything like psychohistory today probably will not predict something like, oh, next week Phantom's gonna definitely go up, or like 90% gonna go up.
By the way.
That'd be awesome. But I think it's going to say, oh, in 10 years' time, crypto will be the norm. You can possibly, maybe it will be in the banks, and it's going to be the only way to make transaction, whatever. So this is something that you can predict. Actually, this prediction thing came up recently in COVID, because about Bill Gates thing, that he said, oh, in the next few years, the worst thing that's expecting humanity is an outbreak. And then and then people said, oh, he knew it. It's just, come on, that's Bill Gates. I mean, he's a genius, first of all, and his whole business is based on trying to predict what the next, what the future is going to be, especially technology-wise, right? I mean, that's what he does, So it's not surprising that he predicted that, because that's what he did. He, at the time, he predicted people would need these PCs at home, which was a preposterous idea at the time, by the way. Why do you need this huge machine in the house? It's completely useless. So it was the same thing with Apple. I mean, the first Apple computer was, people thought that was, oh, you can draw on it. It's like, oh, that's it? I can just draw lines, What is it good for?
It's a drawing machine.
Yeah, it's a drawing machine. It's a glorified drawing machine,
Yeah.
I can draw on a paper. Why do I need that? So it's I think hilarious, and obviously writers like Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke, they also tried to predict the future themselves. Like Arthur C. Clarke especially made a lot of predictions. He actually predicted the communication satellites. He's credited with that, but he also made so many wrong predictions. I'll tell you one of them. I'm not going to bore you with them, but one of them is, I found it really hilarious. He said that humans will train animals, and animals will become our servants, like bringing you a drink or something. So we made that prediction. By the way, there was a request.
Yeah, sure.
Toby, did you?
Yeah,
Okay,
BC
cool.
Dang, I invited BC Dang up to the stage. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good, man. How you guys doing?
Thanks so
Great,
much.
awesome.
Hey, I had something to add to that in a sense of like cycle prediction. I mean, it's already happening with glass nodes, right? With Bitcoin and following on metrics calculations, kind of basically figuring out when the next cycle is. And so, like, crypto is so young. I mean, 5 years ago to now, there's so many projects that went dead, right? So there's no really legacy crypto that can give us that prediction yet. But Bitcoin is the only one, because of the history of it. It's just, we have all the data on it. But if you're talking about maybe 50 years, right? You're taking all the crypto data for all maybe top 10, 15 projects that have lasted for 50 years. All that data compared to like, as well as the last 200 years in, how the economy is built with the stock market, and then having AI develop where it can track world economy from different countries and states and issues that are going on. I think at that point you're gonna be able to have a higher prediction of like, what the future holds, in a sense of like, once crypto's mainstream, once crypto has an economy along with traditional central banking system as well. By that time, I think you're going to get to a point where you're able to actually see how to predict, which country is going to grow, which is not, because then all that data is streaming online, and you're going to be able to cipher all that down. So I think it definitely is with technology as it grows. It definitely is going to be available.
I think this is an awesome point. Yeah. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, you're right.
I'll just my 2 cents putting into it. That's all.
Awesome.
AI predictions, just for the large scale on the trading or any mathematical zone, if you want to predict in a day scale or hour scale, it's impossible. And also all the big bots, on the trading market or economy, every time they want to catch you in the bad line, and they want to get all your money from your wallet. So the bots always trying to do different kind of things, and also they are generating the future data, because they're always managing the market like this. All the big miners also. So maybe they don't know what they are doing, but they are also writing their data on the future. So all the predictions every time, every day gets changing, and it will be changed all the time. I think you're on a great point.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, there are things that we'll never be able to predict that's going to affect the world economy, like a war, just like right now. How with the Russia-Ukrainian war, where obviously these things all affect the economy as well, and we don't even know how he's going to go on and how he's going to be in terms of, I think in general, if you look at, for instance, COVID, it was totally unexpected. I mean, Bill Gates knew. I mean, he didn't know. He didn't know. By the way, he said the next big danger is this, and he was right. And anybody could have also said that. It's not. He didn't think that it could happen like this year. But actually, I'm thinking about it. Sometimes it works the other way around. Like, I think it was beneficial for crypto. The COVID was beneficial for crypto, in my opinion, because I think people kept relying online applications more and more, and I think and borders have become thinner in a way, because now it's much easier to work from home and from a distance. So you don't need to be in the same room with people to bring out a project like this. I mean, I think a lot of NFT projects are like that as well. But if you look at Void Armada, I mean, Doğan and I are close. I mean, we live close, but everybody else is just all around the world. Like Toby's from New York, and Chippy's from Spain, and so it's just we're all scattered around the world, and we can work just fine. I mean, it's just so. I think this brings in terms of economy, I think this affects crypto in a positive way, because it's a really, really practical option. I mean, I know firsthand, because I've been doing a lot of work, for companies abroad. Like I did actually work for Australian government per se, and like all these transactions and everything, when you want to get paid, whatever, it's all tricky. But next time I'm just going to ask for a crypto. It's just so simple. It's untraceable. Why bother? I'm just thinking to myself. So I think with more and more people start to use, it's going to get obviously more valuable, and it's going to go up. And I think. But in general, I think it is difficult to predict human nature. That's the problem. I think we can definitely can use big data to predict maybe general outcomes, rough outcomes. Yeah, you could say in 20 years' time this might happen, but it is very difficult to predict human nature, and that's the tricky part. And that is why I think Foundation series has to remain in the realm of science fiction, but not science. So that's what I think. And while on the subject, there are some other things I want to explore about Foundation as well. Not just the psychohistory part, but having a galactic empire. So this is pretty interesting, because the way the way Isaac Asimov found out about this idea was he actually read Edward Gibbon's History of Decline and Fall of Roman Empire, which is a fantastic book. So, and I recently finished a podcast about Roman history of Rome, until the fall of the Western Roman Empire. And it's just amazing. And now I can somehow see his point of view. So he basically imagined, a galactic empire, because it's sci-fi, so it has to be galactic empire, which is very relevant to us because Void Armada also has a galactic empire called Sol Imperium, right? So
yeah.
And I think primary influence was definitely Foundation. I mean, you can also name Star Wars. There's a galactic empire there, an evil one. It was a republic, then turns to an empire. But this is again an interesting subject. I sometimes think to myself how it could be possible. So, or does it even make sense to go to the stars? Is it economically viable in that sort of sense? Because if it's too expensive, what's the point? Because everything you do, I mean, humans do in general, you have to somehow profit from it, right? Even wars are profitable. So if this is not going to be profitable, no one's going to pay, no government is going to pay, for something that will take you to the stars unless a really easy way is found out, that makes it a breeze. Which is tricky, actually. I didn't want to go into this subject today because this is a subject of FTL, actually, faster than light travel.
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing. But let's say for the time being let's say we found out a faster way to travel between stars, a quick way. By the way, in Void Armada, the technique we're using is called jump drive. Again, it's sort of inspired from, I say, Foundation a little bit.
It's totally Foundation, I think. You're right.
Yeah, I like the idea of jump drive because the other is, because I think that's the one that kind of makes sense to me. I mean, warp drive, because jump drive is basically something like opening a wormhole yourself. It's actually a really quick way to travel. So there is no travel time, actually. You're like creating a hole in the fabric of space and just going outside the other side, no matter the distance. So there is no time to travel. So it's kind of, to me, I mean, a lot of scientists assume at the moment that Alcubierre drive, which is the warp drive, can make sense in a way. I mean, it's mathematically, it's working. But I think there are lots of problems in warp drive because when you are somehow going faster than light, even if you're moving the space, I mean, in warp drive, basically, you stand still, actually, the space moves. Because space itself can move faster than light, but nothing in space can. So that's the premise of warp drive. So there is still some kind of movement, but you're not moving. You're standing still, kind of. I mean, you cannot stand still in space. There is no such a thing. I mean, relative to what? That's the question. You can be still relative to Earth or Sun, but if you're in like middle of nowhere, it's just what is it you're doing? You're technically in a vacuum, So the problem with that is the time. It's just that is what's left out so much. So it just somehow going faster than the speed of light messes up time. So you're basically gonna go back in time. So it's really weird, and it brings out all these weird paradoxes, like the grandfather paradox and such. So I kind of feel, not because I love Foundation, I wanted to be inspired from it, but the jump drive idea is kind of makes more sense to me. It's also mathematically possible, very difficult to do, maybe even impossible actually to do, because the energy is required to open a wormhole is like limitless kind of thing. So the energy of the whole universe itself kind of thing, unless we find an easier way to do it. But still, I'm having a sip from my drink. So, so I think, but still, suppose that we figured out a way to travel faster, and like the stars are within our reach. I mean, obviously, without that, I don't think there's much sense in going out and like colonizing worlds. It's economically definitely not viable. Doesn't make sense. But if you can go fast, if you can go like instantly, I wonder if we do it, because humans they like expansion. We like to expand, and I wonder if we do it. Go ahead and colonize the worlds. What do you think? By the way, Toby, you can also pitch in.
There's so much that needs to happen. I know that there are plans right now to like set up a small colony on the moon that they've like found where water sources are and stuff like that to actually get like a colony up there. I just don't know. Like so much has to happen between now and then. I don't know if we will ever like actually see it in our lifetime.
I mean, that can make sense, because setting up a colony on the moon will be like it will open up easy travel within the solar system with the technology we have. Because the problem with space travel is like getting off Earth's 1G gravity. It's just gravity. You don't want to be near a gravity well. So everything in the sense, in that sort of sense, everything becomes kind of much easier on the moon. So basically, you can use the moon as like a pit stop, because as you know, when you're launching rockets, you're carrying your own fuel. So if you can fuel up on the way, then if you carry, then you'll be much lighter, and you can get much bigger payloads into the space, which will make it easier to colonize the other planets like Mars. So I think that kind of moon base makes a lot of sense. You can put a telescope there, like a space telescope, because basically when you're on the moon, you're in space because there's no atmosphere. There you go. You're just like actually standing in space. So and as you said, Toby, that's right. There is enough water, I think, to sustain a colony there. It will be difficult in low gravity. I think that's sort of a pain. The other issue with the moon, by the way, is the moon dust. Because it's this, if you look at it, if you've seen the pictures of moon dust taken with microscope, it looks like this little thorn. It's just really spiky. It's this horrible thing. It sticks on you. It will get into your spacesuit. It will get into the machines. It will break everything. And I was watching this sci-fi show on YouTube, and one of the listeners asked a great question. They said, I think it would be really wise to build a space, like landing platform on the moon. You have to, because the problem is if you keep landing into the same place over and over on the moon, you will lift up so much moon dust, and it will go into the space, start orbiting the moon, and at some point, it will become literally impossible to land the vehicle to the moon, because you'll be bombarded with these little particles, really fast going, like, thousands of miles per hour going particles that will actually destroy your ship. So you must not lift moon dust. That's the thing. As soon as the first colony is kind of, starts to get set up, the first thing they need to build is a landing platform without any moon dust on it, so you don't lift any. So moon dust is a nightmare, unfortunately. But I think expanding to solar system, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, again, if we go back, we can connect these traces to our current economy. And if you think about the chip crises we have now, I mean, it's basically, it's a logistical thing more like, but the world is running out of valuable materials. And I'm thinking, like, we all threw out those, GPUs, the graphics card that we're not using. We just binned them. We should have recycled them, because we need those chips right now. And, and I think in the near future, this is a prediction, okay? In the near future, it will be against the law to throw out your electronic hardware. You will have to recycle it. I mean, we're not doing right now. It's a huge mistake because we're going to run out of things like, bore. Am I saying right? So, and some of these really valuable materials that are essential for the electronics. So the solution is actually in space. There are so many asteroids that are just waiting to be mined, and even with today's technology, I think we can definitely undertake such a project, and at some point we will have to, because we will want to continue the technology we have right now. We will want to keep our standards. We don't want to give up your technology. You don't want to go back. So we will have to do that, and then based on the moon, will make much more sense then. And one idea is to actually grab the asteroids and bring into the orbit of the moon or the Earth, and then mine there. So that's a good idea. I think all of these things will be much easier in the future with automated systems. Like you'll send a spacecraft, it will just grab the asteroid and bring it back, and it will kind of hopefully work flawlessly. And I think for our current economical model, we'll need this kind of expansion. So I think expanding into solar system makes a lot of sense. Also, we can do a lot of good science too. There are still, I think, amazing things to be found out, like the moons of Jupiter, Saturn. There's there could be even life there. Like underwater life in the oceans of Europa or Enceladus. So it will answer really fundamental questions for us. Are we alone, or is it the only life? Because Earth is the only life we know. We don't know anywhere else. So this is the only example. So if we can find life under the oceans of Europa or Enceladus, or even Titan maybe, then it means that life is so common. I mean, even if it's in two places in one solar system, and it developed originated separately, then it means life is a really common thing. But I don't know if civilizations are. I doubt it. This is also, I think, a really interesting discussion, because I think, the ongoing question about, is there life out there? Is there civilizations out there? The Fermi Paradox, if there are aliens, where are they? We cannot detect them. We can see them. I believe the threshold from going from animal life and plant life to intelligent beings is very, very. I think there's a really low chance. The reason I'm saying this is because I think if you think about the dinosaurs, right? If you think your arm length, the timeline of the dinosaurs, that lived on Earth, the time of humans will be the tip of your nail. So we lived, Homo sapiens, we lived much, much shorter than the dinosaurs. So if you're an alien, and if you come to Earth in general, you usually find dinosaurs here. If any time, if you look at planet Earth's 4.6 billion lifetime, if you just pick a random moment and land on the planet, on Earth, you would say, oh, this planet belongs to the dinosaurs. You'll probably bump into them rather than us. So this, I think, even this one shows that intelligence isn't necessary. It's not. It's not a belief, but I don't think that intelligence is part of evolution. It doesn't have to be. You don't start from single cell, go and then go to the land and become a bipedal creature and then get smart. That it doesn't work like that. I think us happening is because of series of huge coincidences that never should have happened. And also, I think having a large moon helps, because that's the way a lot of creatures just went from being amphibious to, crawlers. So because they had to go from one pond to the pond because of the tidal effects of the moon. So having a large moon like this is also extremely rare. I think so. I think we are here thanks to the moon, thanks to Jupiter. Jupiter is also great for us because it's capturing all those big asteroids, killer asteroids or comets that's going to destroy our civilization or like life as we know it. So we're extremely lucky to be here and to be in, that we are smart. So Dawn has joined again. He requested.
I think Dawn keeps getting rugged and kicked out of Twitter space.
I got him.
And it's so interesting too when you like break down like the idea of like intelligence and stuff, and then we have these little devices in our hands that were originally conceived in like Star Trek and were like communicating across space and time in our own little like planet structure. Like it all is like pretty. There's like so many layers of craziness of just existence, even before you get to like the celestial bodies.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all stardust, right? we're born in the heart of a star, and then it exploded and created all these, valuable materials like gold and like silicon and whatever, and then we happened. So, by the way, when I was thinking of the aliens, I'm not going to spoil them here. The Gons. So basically, Gons are the alien creatures in Void Armada universe. So the first time I was thinking about them, I thought they should be definitely aquatic creatures, because I believe, because of this is because of the thing I just said, like having a large moon. Because if you don't have a large moon, if you don't have these tides, then it will be rotted. Then you'll probably end up being a water planet. So I think water planets and planets like Europe and Enceladus, they're actually more common, I believe. So if you're going to create, alien species, I think it is most likely to be like aquatic creatures somehow, and they could maybe somehow be intelligent, and obviously Sci-Fi has delved into this a lot. But it's difficult because trying to tell a story with aquatic creatures, it's kind of difficult. We want aliens that are like us, By the way, in Foundation series, there are no aliens. This is not a spoiler. It's a general thing. I mean, when you start the book, you realize there's no talk about any kind of aliens. So it's like an empty universe, just with humans, and which is very likely, by the way. I mean, we might even be the only intelligent species in the Milky Way galaxy. So, that was one of the reasons.
Everyone's getting existential dread from this conversation. It's like the universe is so vast, and I'm just a guy on a rock.
That's right. But that's what it is, and I think when you realize that, you become more humble, and you maybe you start enjoying life more. Maybe if more people thought like this, like we're just like a mote, on like a piece of rug, as you said, or in the air.
Well, there's I always mispronounce the name. It's like Kirkstat or whatever on YouTube. They do like animated.
I watch them all the time.
Videos. Yeah,
Kyrgyzstan or something like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
They did one that was even just about the way that human beings calculate our own time, and like from roughly time of when humans started to conform into stations, cities, plant crops, to what we would consider like civilized society, that's about like 10,000 years. But because we break up time into BC and AD, then we have this like really strange conception of the newness of our own existence, like to say that it's only the year 2022, when in reality human beings have been around for like 10,000 years, and we don't calculate that weight of history, of that weight of existence, into our daily sort of the way that we go about our day. And would it be different if we were instead in the year 10,022, and we understood like all the history that came before us, and we were thinking about all of humanity that has existed before us, you know?
That's right. By the way, that time frame, that 10,000 years, is actually not Homo sapiens. It's I think the time we started like settling down, and that is one of the reasons that, actually maybe the only reason that time frame came out, is because of Göbekli Tepe, which is, you know, as probably the listeners, everyone knows, is actually the site in Urfa, in Turkey, in southern Turkey. So Göbekli Tepe actually means belly hill. that's exactly what it means. That's the exact translation. Because they look like these cute bellies, you know. Anyway, so when they found Göbekli Tepe, they realized that those things are like, they look like kind of a ritualistic place, or it could be also, they could also be kind of watches in a way, kind of astronomical devices somehow, because those things are, because, you know, it reminds me a lot of Stonehenge, those round rocks. So maybe it's kind of it's maybe used for astronomy, not for the hell of it, because astronomy, as soon as people found about astronomy, it just became extremely useful, because now you can predict, you know, like the seasons. You can predict like when the rivers will overflow, and then, you know, so it made a lot of sense. So probably maybe it's that, or maybe they were like religious places. So that really puzzled people, because the scientists, because the problem is I think the general idea was, first people settled down and then religion came. So, but the problem with Göbekli Tepe is that all those monuments, they're not for living spaces. There are no living places. There is no city. So you don't see any kind of, you know, like you don't see any remains of big structures like government, you know, houses or something, city halls, whatever. It's just those things. So, which is surprising. So it is, I think people at the time were still kind of nomadic, but they probably kept coming to this place maybe for pilgrimage, or again, maybe it was like a central spot for people to come and like look at the stars and predict what's going to happen to their crops and the rivers, whatever. And then they went back. So 10,000 years is the time actually we're supposed to have settled down. That's kind of the beginning of the first civilization, the Göbekli Tepe civilization. So actually humans, so here's the interesting thing that puzzles me. Humans, Homo sapiens, are actually around for 200,000 years. So the question is, why now? I mean, if you go back in time, take a human being from 200,000 years ago, like take a baby, you know, you go there, you go to someone's cave, you snatch their baby, you bring it back to 21st century, you educate them like we do, and then it will just turn out to be an NFT artist, you know. Just it will surely be an NFT artist. So or a YouTuber.
So you're advocating for a remake of Encino Man, where he becomes a crypto artist at the end, right?
Yeah. that is the natural evolution. I think that's where we're going, you know, from one cell creatures, you know, to lizards, and you know, and then to NFT artists. I think that's where we're going. So yeah, I ask myself, why now? Why then?
Well, hang
why
on,
not
Tom.
before?
How you doing, BC Dang? You want to jump in here?
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
one thing about that is that it also depends on how the evolution of our brain and our DNA is, because through every generation, right, more and more we got bigger brain development. So if you went back to that time period and you took that baby to here, it may not have that much brain power inputting to be able to understand, right? Because with our DNA and genetics, every time we pass it down to our next sibling, we get a little bit more of that evolution process. So it's kind of like, I mean, if you can actually sit and watch through 200,000 years, the slow process, I mean, the development from where we came to where we are now is pretty advanced in the sense that we are able to have a consciousness to make, critical thinking decisions. But if you look at, like, animals like, octopuses or other, neural developmental animals, they're way ahead of us. They just don't have the preconception of, like, a consciousness. Like, if that is ever evolved in those animals, they could totally destroy us in the sense of, like, knowing how to group together, configure themselves, and take over. So it's kind of like, it's interesting what you're bringing up, because it's really unique how you're taking this almost like scientific approach and then kind of coming into it and seeing, like, how at 10,000 years from now, how we're going to evolve. And I honestly think that we're just going to be people with much bigger brains and bigger heads.
Oh,
Nice.
that is interesting, actually. That's interesting because that is one of the predictions. But Toby, go ahead first. You were going to say something. Sorry. I talked too much. Sorry. You go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, this is Sci-Fi and Tonic with Void Armada. We're talking with Dawn, Chippy, who are the Void Armada team. If any of you would like to step up and contribute to the conversation, we'd love to have you. We're talking sci-fi, obviously. We're talking existential dread, the size of the universe, and compared to the small size of our brains. So, yeah, raise a hand if you want to come chat with us. And thanks for joining us.
But yeah, you just said you just said it. Yeah, the size of our brains, definitely. Actually, this was a thing. Like the future humans having like larger heads and larger brains, like bigger eyes. One thing you can tell when you look at like old pictures. This is actually a different subject, by the way. I was thinking about this when you look at like the oldest pictures of humans when you had like people's eyes are like I think smaller. So we have people with bigger eyes and bigger heads right now. I think you can kind of see it, but I'm not sure. There's no scientific base to that. So, but the thing you said is sort of right because bringing a 200-year-old baby today, it could be tricky, but scientists say that actually we finished our evolution then. The brain was actually kind of the same. So, I mean, it's hard to say. Maybe you're right. Maybe it will have this kind of. Maybe during this time, although the brain is similar, maybe there are like subtle changes, really subtle changes that makes us easier to adapt to technology or adapt to sort of modern life. This is one of the reason what I was thinking that is I bought my first car like 6 months ago. So while I was driving fast, I thought to myself, how are we wired to this? In what point in our evolution that we can drive this thing, this, because we don't go that fast, we're not supposed to naturally. So how can we drive? How can we drive fast and be completely fine with it, Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no. So for one thing, is like, yeah, the brain hasn't changed since then, but it's the communication within the brain that has been evolving and developed, right? And so if you learn something new, that's like technology, like fire or building something or anything that's technically advanced, it's passed on to the next generation, and those they call it synapses, communication. It grows within the brain, right? And I think that, with how much has evolved, it could be possible that they can learn, but in the sense that, through the evolution process, there's always a little imprint in that DNA, that genome. And I was developing a graphic novel series based on genetic coding and DNA, and saying that kind of similar to how Prometheus is that we're descendants from a different alien race, but we're genetically cold, right? And we were talking about us being Type 0 civilization compared to like higher intelligence civilization that are Type 3 or 4 that can actually travel from galaxies, harnessing black holes, harnessing energy from stars as they're traveling through interstellar space. And so my idea behind my graphic novel was that there came to be one person who has reached a Type 1 civilization thought process where their genetic code is actually unlocked and they actually evolved into another stage of human species. And then that from that point on was like the evolution of humans into like entering into the intergalactic war that's been going on for eons, between like different galaxies and stuff. So, but kind of like that's why when I saw this project, like I jumped on right away because I was like, man, it's hitting on like all the stuff that I was trying to create, but didn't have the time. But it's just interesting to have all these ideas now floating, especially in an early project like this, because then it can actually help evolve the story. Instead of being a static, it can actually be an evolution of a story in the gaming process as well.
Sorry, by the way, DC, I wasn't trying to interrupt you with my hand raising. I was trying to actually choose clap. So I just kept pressing the wrong button. I do apologize.
No problem.
So you're saying, just to make it clear, you're saying that it is in the genes, it's not a brain thing, right? Am I getting it right?
Yeah. So basically, like as you evolve, right, intelligence or anything is input into your well, how I feel it is it's evolved into your DNA. And so like with every time you build, like, let's say compared to let's say a person who is a natural, let's say physically bodybuilder, that have spent hundreds of years passing his DNA down, his generation is going to be big, like the Vikings, or like anybody that like over time has built that type of physicality, that DNA. It's the same thing with someone who never done any type of physical activity. They won't have those predetermined, evolution that's passed on to the next generation. And you can see this in like animals that have like quick generations. You can watch, like, if there's one mutation or one change, all of a sudden it's a new trait. It's something that's given down and passed. And that's when you can look at different species of animals that have the same ancestry, but they're totally different in genetic makeup just because of one little trait, and that changes over time. And humans, our generations are a lot longer, so it's harder to see it. But if you go back in history, you can start looking at the Mendelian traits of like how people were from different parts of the world and in areas, and kind of learn from that. But to me, it's always been about like the evolution of humans, in the sense of mapping and imprinting in the genetic code, which we technically pass down to our offsprings.
By the way, while we're on the subject, this is pretty interesting. While we're on the subject, I want to actually recommend the book. This is actually a science book, not a sci-fi book. It's called Origins. Just that, very simple.
Yep.
Lewis Dartnell. It just explains how humans came to be in a way, and it's a page turner, surprisingly. So it was pretty interesting, and one of the explanations about how we came to be as how we formed civilization lies, according to him, is in the climate, actually, because apparently, like 10,000, 20,000 years ago, the last ice age ended. So, and one scary thing about that, by the way, he says that it's going to come again. So there's an ice age waiting for us, by the way. Anyway, this is not the point. But the point is that because it is really fascinating to us, because the first people settled down where we are living right now in Turkey, in southern Turkey, in the Levant, the Fertile Crescent. So if you look at why they were like tens of I think 27 different species of seeds there. So it just made sense to settle there than everywhere else. And also some other places too, like obviously Egypt, and also in near India as well. There were some points like that, specific points. But I think after the Ice Age, I I think it made more sense to settle down rather than being a nomadic, leading a nomadic kind of lifestyle. So I think it's the climate. And I really found that explanation in this book, Origins book, quite satisfactory in a way. Because then why? I mean, if humans have been like this, I mean, you have a point, definitely, but why then? Why not now? Because the problem between 200,000 years and to 10,000 years, yeah, probably humans developed at the time, but that's a huge gap. Why not in the middle, or why not like 100,000 years later, but just 10,000 years before? Because it's basically because of the climate. It just basically allowed, I think, settling down, and it made sense to people to settle down and form a civilization. Again, this I think shows that even if you have intelligent species on a planet, they don't necessarily turn into civilizations. It's not maybe like one way. It is not just like inevitable direction that goes to civilization and spacefaring civilization. And humans in the history, humans have known to go back. By the way, we have advanced, and then Bronze Age collapse happened, and we went back like 3,000 years. Like the fall of Roman Empire we just mentioned. It's just, again, I think we went back a lot. We lost a lot there. Even maybe if history happened differently, if like one person died at some point in history, maybe we were still at some kind of Middle Ages. Because during the Middle Ages, there was some development, I think, in general. It's not true that there was no scientific development, but there was very little. So I think, again, you don't turn into a spacefaring civilization necessarily. You can go on living like a tribal lifestyle. A good example would be, I think, Australia, the Aboriginals. So to me, it's fascinating because they invented astronomy like 10,000 years before the Greeks. So they were there on that. They passed there during the Ice Age. They could probably humans could walk there to Australia, and they stayed there. And it's really fascinating to me that they never formed a civilization. So this shows, and they were before the Europeans came there, they were completely disconnected from the rest of the world. And why didn't they form a civilization? Why didn't they settle down? Why did they keep living like nomads? Again, the answer lies in the climate. So it's like a huge roll of dice that we are here. And I think we should, as Toby said, we should realize how insignificant that is. We just should be grateful that we even exist, I think. Because it's just like a series of amazing coincidences that happened. So even if you're intelligent, you don't need to form a civilization. It's not necessary for your survival. Apparently, then the Aboriginals would have done it.
Well, you mentioned like slight alterations in history, and I there's a science fiction book like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it also is Asimov, isn't it? It was like about this like sort of time organization where they live outside of regular time, and they'll pop in to like one of the examples is like someone who goes to a meeting and their book gets picked up, and their book goes on to start a war in the year like 300 or 400 years later. So they go and the time police go in and like alter something slightly so that he misses his meeting. The book doesn't get published. The war is averted, and life goes on, which I think is a really interesting concept.
This reminds me of the TV series Loki, a little bit.
Right.
Did you see those?
Oh yeah, I liked Loki a lot. I liked Loki a whole lot.
Yeah, the time police and everything. I love the idea of having that kind of a time. What is that called? It's like it's revered. Like it's like a religion. The timeline. You must not, like holy, right? Holy timeline kind of thing. So you must not change the timeline of time,
Right.
space time. Otherwise, the cops come and. By the way, I haven't read the book you said. I don't know.
I'm gonna have to look it up. There's like a couple books that I read a long, long time ago, and they just live in my brain now and float around. And sometimes I'll grab a hold of one, and I can't totally remember the title or where or when I read it. But that's one of them. Hey, Meefs, I saw that you requested to be a speaker. You want to come up and join this conversation? Talk about some time travel?
Yo, hey, I joined in probably about, I don't know, 5-10 minutes ago or so. What is the conversation on? Because I heard the bit about like civilization and the 10,000 year to 200,000 year sort of gap of history for humanity, and sort of that quintessential question that we all should ask. It's like, yo, why did civilization pop up in like the Middle East, basically? Like, why did it happen there and not elsewhere? But yeah, what else the conversation about today?
And yeah, actually, it was that. And one of the culprits we were mentioning is the climate, because the climate was the most suitable there in the Levant and in Egypt and in India. So, I mean, this according to I was mentioning a book called Origins, and according to that book, which made a lot of sense to me, was the climate and the availability of like fresh water. So that was one of the explanations. So it's just, but I mean, the general discussion is like, should the evolution lead to, or humankind should lead to a civilization? Do we need civilization? Like, I mean, we do right now. We cannot do it right now. But
like, is it baked in basically, or is it inevitable in a way?
exactly, that was the conversation. So
Word.
one of the examples I was giving was the Aboriginals. Like, I mean, they didn't form a civilization. They didn't even settle down. They were completely disconnected from the rest of the world until the Europeans came, and they led a nomadic lifestyle. And they are humans too. They even started using astronomy like 10,000 years before the Greeks. So they were not backwards people. They had their science in a way, because they had to find their way onto that huge, continent, and the outback. But they never did form a civilization. So the question is that essential? Is that the way to go? So when we look at, I think the answer we're looking for is, when we look at space, why don't we see maybe civilizations? And maybe this is the reason. Maybe you have a planet, the whole planet is like Australia, and the people are living so happily as nomads, like humans did before 10,000 years ago.
That's an interesting sort of solution for the Fermi paradox. I've seen. I mean, like, I'm familiar with it. With that idea of like, if the Drake equation, just to use one, of many sort of estimates for life out there, like if the Drake equation is correct, then where the hell are all the aliens, yo? Like, where are they at? Where they be? But personally, I kind of ascribe to the idea of what do you call it, like the dark force theory, that any sufficient alien, intelligence would have evolved to a point that they could like conceal themselves or hide themselves or otherwise be undetected. Um, but who knows? Honestly, like, when you really kind of get down to it, because we're talking, quite frankly, about like unknown states of reality, and just by that basic premise, is unfalsifiable. Like, we can't falsify the claim that they're not there. So yeah, we're right back where we started, sort of deal. But I do recall seeing something a long time ago talking about, I forget if it was in Jordan or where it was exactly, but there was somewhere where like they got hit with famine, and it was a death blow for their society. Like, they basically had some ecological situation befall them where things were once like lush green, or they were provided for, and then it was like they had a bad drought, or the crops died, and as a society, they couldn't, withstand that. But I do think it's a valid, almost sort of like a critique of society, if you will, or culture. Even it's like, is this baked into the fabric, or like what are we doing? And it's kind of funny. It's one of those things where, like a lot of technology, it just kind of operates in the background, and so you don't really be thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's going along, and society is kind of like one of those technologies. It's like it's a shared mental state, or a shared mind, if you will, that we can all kind of tap into and agree upon, and this shared consensus layer, and then we all benefit from it. But um, I've had I don't know if you want to call it a benefit, but I've had, the benefit of seeing like society go away and then come back. Like I've seen acts of God, quote unquote, where, all right, now society shut down. None of the stuff that you were doing before is happening now. And yeah, I've seen it kind of come and go. So in a way, I do see where when all bets are off, and the chips are down, so to speak, people kind of go back to their, I don't know, their natural ways. But once things are singing and humming again, once everything's plugged up, society resumes.
I think you touched so many bases there. By the way, I was like, it was great that you mentioned dark forest theory. Basically, it's for people who don't know, it's from a series called Three Body Problem by Xijin Liu, a Chinese writer. I think those series, the 3-book series, is I think one of the best science fiction series I've ever read, ever. So, and yeah, the dark forest theory, trying to explain the Fermi paradox, makes so much sense in a way. By the way, Stephen Hawking said a similar thing, that like the colonization of Americas didn't go so well for the Indians. So if aliens came here, they'd do the same to us, assuming that aliens have human nature. So we don't know. It's a big assumption, but dark forest theory makes more sense in a way, because of the distances. Because of the distances, we cannot healthily communicate with the aliens. Suppose they're like in the books. Suppose they're like alien civilization in the nearest star, like in Alpha Centauri, which is about 4.44 light years away. So kind of close, in our cosmic neighborhood. It's the closest one. Suppose they're like there. So we say hello, and they say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And it will be 8 years. So 4 years forward and back. So dark forest theory states that this communication, there will be a chain of mistrust. I think he exactly uses these words: the chain of mistrust. Because you cannot communicate healthily. It's just because of this distance and the delay. You'll always kind of suspect what's the other going to do, other side going to do. I mean, we had that similar thing here in the Cold War. Like this miscommunication between the countries, and almost went into a nuclear, like Third World War, whatever. There were like so many instances like that. If you remember, there is one that they get this. One Russian soldier sees this thing on the screen, like there's like a nuclear attack from America, which is actually a glitch in the system, in the computer, and he decides not to act and not to tell his superiors, and he's today like a hero, and he like single-handedly stopped the nuclear holocaust. So and even on Earth, we had this kind of mutual distrust, and with aliens, especially knowing how humans are against against people who don't look like you, I think it's pretty likely that it says that the theory states that like civilizations are like hunters in a forest, like in a dark forest. They're They're going. Just trying to keep quiet. They don't wanna. The others know their places, so they're trying to hide from everybody else. So it's kind of a valid explanation to Fermi Paradox, by the way. Yeah. So that is probably one of the reasons. But obviously, I mean, in sci-fi, you don't have that problem. Why? Because in sci-fi, the communication is instant. Like in Star Wars, you communicate with a planet that's on the other side of the galaxy. You say, "Hey, I'm coming," and like, "Oh yeah, whatever," and then you just zoom there. So, by the way, one of the communication methods that I've seen that was actually interesting was in Mass Effect games. They use something called entanglement device. I think it's not scientifically accurate, obviously, but it kind of makes sense because of quantum entanglement. You can have two different atoms behaving in the same way, however distant they are. So if they're entangled, if you separate them, let's say two hydrogen atoms, when they're entangled, they start to spin in the same speed and the same direction. And then even if you take them apart like light years away, it will not matter. They will be, once they're entangled, they will act the same. But I mean, I thought this would maybe help like long distance like instant communication. But I like read some stuff about it, and it says that it doesn't really work that way that we imagine the entanglement. So it's possibly not. It will not be possible. But of course, we're assuming that happened because again, if we go back to the beginning, Meeves, you missed the beginning. At the beginning, we talked about Foundation and having a galactic empire, which is something we have in Void Armada. There is a galactic empire, human empire called Sol Imperium. So in order to have an empire that you can control at the same time, then you need instant communication. Otherwise, it will not be possible. I think what would happen in that case is that suppose that you can travel really fast, right, somehow. And suppose that you decided to colonize the planets, habitable planets in the solar system. Because of this miscommunication, because of the distance of communication, basically those people will go there, they'll form their own culture, their language will change. Even if you try to communicate with them, you'll need to encode their language because they will be completely separated from humanity, and their culture will change. Everything will change. Maybe even how they look even might change. They might somehow evolve in time according to the place they've landed, because not everywhere will be exactly like Earth. Maybe it's going to have like higher percentage of oxygen or lower, or maybe less gravity, more gravity. So they will eventually somehow change, or they will change themselves and adapt. That's more likely, by the way, because evolution happens in billion years. So this is also an interesting concept, that this communication thing. If you cannot communicate instantly, there is no galactic empire. Forget it. How are you going to manage it? Or administer it? It's not going to be possible. You cannot tell them what to do. They won't care. They say, "Oh no, we won't do that."
That was like one of the interesting things that I found about The Expanse as like a sci-fi concept, where each, like, even just within the space confines of our own solar system, that the societies were developing independently of each other, with independent regard of each other. I thought that was a real interesting take on the sci-fi genre around that communication aspect. But yeah, go ahead, BC Dang, I go off.
Hey, yeah, well, I had an idea because like it was interesting that you brought up about unable to communicate instantly, because that does make sense. As they're moving to another part of the galaxy, they'll evolve on their own. But have you ever thought about like creating like a projected idea of like somehow harnessing photons and be able to encrypt photons to send messages so that I mean, it's a far idea, but photons, they act differently than light and sound waves, and so maybe something that can actually go through dark space and everything, but somehow harness that power for communication. I don't know. It was just something that was interesting to me. That's all.
Yeah, the problem is, I think it's possible, but the problem is this speed of light, because nothing can go faster than light. Still, whatever you do, you can basically, the fastest way to communicate will be by laser anyway, by using photons. It's not going to be radio probably, because radio degenerates quickly in space because of the cosmic rays and everything. But light, you can send, if you shine up a very, very, very powerful laser to Alpha Centauri, like a beacon, and then blink it like Morse code, and then you can communicate, definitely. But because it's not going to go for faster than light. Again, whatever you do, it's going to take 4 years to say hello to Alpha Centauri. So one way could be maybe not photons, but there is this. I'm trying to remember the name. There is this particles called tachyons, right? So tachyons are supposed to be particles that go faster than light. So scientists are there's actually scientists in the world looking for that. Maybe there is a particle that we don't know. Like you said, maybe it's kind of a photon kind of a thing that goes faster than speed of light. But so far, nothing came up. So it's likely that it's not going to happen in the way we think right now.
Yeah. Well, another thing too is like, these are just like fantasy ideas and everything, but even like with, somehow, let's say in this gameplay, or being able to have the technology to harness dark matter, because you're talking about scientists now saying that discovering, I think 30-40% of the space is like dark matter that we can't see. But if somehow you have technology that can tap into that, and then you can actually send signals through dark matter, and then you can harness into that network and run your messages or anything. That's another something that I've looked into, and it's just like a fantasy idea. That's all.
Well, I think go ahead. Sorry.
No, no worries, man. I was going to say, isn't there the idea though that like with Hawking radiation that they've been able to prove basically that those messages or the radiation can propagate info beyond the event horizon somehow. Like it can escape the event horizon, as it were. So from like the photon standpoint, if you can get 2 or more photons to couple, this is totally armchair understanding, but like I thought the communication was supposed to be like instantaneous. Is there still like a limit of the speed of light? Because that's the very basis for like quantum cryptography, where you have like 2 or more qubits or photons that are entangled, and then you mimic the superposition of both across whatever whatever the distance is.
That's pretty cool, actually. It's interesting you mentioned black holes. I think black hole science of black holes will reveal a lot, because a lot of the unknown, I think, lies in there, because we cannot see inside an event horizon. By the way, one of the things you said, what happens is, okay, if you think of event horizon like this line, okay, it's like a sphere around the black hole, but you're just at the edge of it, right? So there is something called a virtual particle. Basically in space, these particles, they just come in out of nowhere, and then they annihilate each other. So one of them is like a proton, or like an antiproton, which is an antimatter actually. They just happen together, and then antimatter and matter just annihilate each other with 100% energy output. So what happens when this happens just on the side of event horizon? This particle happens to come to being at the right time, at the right place, at the side of the event horizon. So they do not annihilate each other. What happens is one of them goes out, the other one goes in. And this keeps happening constantly. I think this is one of the reasons, and there's like there's also huge energy there, and and I think they're also entangled. So, I'm just, by the way, making it up now. It's in the realms of sci-fi. Maybe you can grab one of these particles that escaped outside of the event horizon, and somehow, because they're entangled, maybe you can communicate inside the black hole. So, and maybe through so if somehow the black holes are connected, then you can create this network of communication, like beacons in a way, centrals throughout the galaxy. So it's not like instant communication, but you communicate with the nearest black hole, but the communication inside the black holes are like instant, and then the other person receives the information from the black hole, but you need to still account for the time from the particle from the black hole to you, and you don't want to be near a black hole, by the way. So you'll have robots or whatever spacecraft. You're not going to put humans there, definitely not. But this is pretty interesting, and I think it's an interesting concept that it's I think good sci-fi.
I was going to ask y'all too. Have y'all heard of a book called All Tomorrows?
No.
Oh man, go like as ASAP, as soon as you can. Go on to YouTube. There's a very good reading of it. I think the name of the channel is called Beware the Q, spelled QU, but it's a great sort of like compendium of it's basically like a billion years in space and all these different species and aliens and all this sort of stuff that that's out there. And really, I don't know, the way I kind of regard it, because there's not necessarily a full-blown plot to it, but it's almost like an encyclopedia kind of thing, like a fictional encyclopedia. But the way they break it down, it makes it very just very tangible as to what could be, or just different things that could happen and all this sort of stuff. And man, I was captivated. I had never heard of the author before. I just randomly saw it on a recommendation and started listening, and I listened all the way through on that book. It wasn't too long. It was like an hour and 30 or something, but it was good. It was solid. So I would absolutely recommend it, because they talk about a lot of this stuff. And that idea you were talking about, this like, yo, if you don't got instant communication, forget a federation, forget your imperial rule. It's not happening. Like, it's funny because I don't know, it's just one of those things that's always kind of, it's like a fudge factor. It's assumed that, yeah, we can do that, but then in reality, there might be these, like you were kind of indicating before, you might have to use like a black hole almost as part of like a telephone network of the universe to send messages, beyond the speed of light, or somehow manipulate these exotic, particles, exotic states of matter, in order to achieve really just a baseline of governance, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, all Tomorrows, man, definitely check that out.
Okay, this is really interesting because the writer is Turkish. As Doğan and I are. So I had no idea. I'm going to really quickly go into this. His name is Cevdet Mehmet Kösemen. Right, he's a Turkish writer. And so interesting, because today I was talking with a friend, and I was talking about how there isn't a big sci-fi culture in Turkey because there aren't many sci-fi writers. I mean, like in old times, there aren't many. So probably there are more and more right now. And this guy, he's 37 years old. He's pretty young. So yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's awesome that you mentioned that. He's a Turkish writer. So I'll definitely will check it out. So I thought somebody else would talk.
Sorry. Hey,
yeah,
hey everybody. This is we're Void Armada. We're an NFC project, and this is our first episode of Sci-Fi and Tonic. Ton, Doan, and Chippy are the Void Armada team. I'm Toby Kurtz, doing social media for Void Armada. And this is our space. We've all of you are welcome to come up and speak. We're scheduled until 3. And I think this has been a great conversation so far. I'm going to walk away from this and maybe pour myself a stiffer drink than the soda that I was drinking before. Now that I am thinking about my existentials, where I exist in the universe. But we're happy to have you guys here. Thanks for joining us and appreciate the conversation. Yeah, the it's always good to find like a new book series or a new author that you haven't come across before. I personally have like a huge collection of books because I refuse to get rid of any books. And whenever I walk in a used bookstore, I'm like, I have to get at least 5. So yeah, always love to grow my collection. There was a series. Has anybody heard of the Electric Church series? It was like a sci-fi noir that was a couple of years ago. Like Electric Church is these people who mod their body with like nuclear power so that they essentially can live forever. And it's about the digitization of human consciousness, but told through like a very noir kind of thing of like this detective sort of guy who has to figure out this mystery. And yeah, that was a good series. I was just thinking about that.
By the way, Toby, you really have an interesting taste. What was the movie you were talking about? Virtuosity? The 90s movie? What was that?
Oh, man.
That you love so much.
Oh, no. Sometimes things just like pop into my brain. And so I was talking about it the other day. This Virtuosity is like a 1995 film with Russell Crowe and Denzel Washington. And it's that this computer program downloads itself into like a body. And then, or no, I think it's something like they do a profile on like all of the serial killers of the world. And then that becomes an AI to like try and predict who's a serial killer. But then it gets downloaded into a body. And Denzel Washington is like the cop that has to stop him. Yeah, I don't know if anyone remembers that VHS classic.
Man, movies in the 90s.
Right. And you could get away with a lot. You can also think of what was that? The Sylvester Stallone movie where he gets frozen.
Demolition Man.
Yeah.
Demolition Man,
right.
baby.
There's a lot of like bizarre like hack sci-fi running around masquerading as it's like action adventure movies masquerading as sci-fi. But yeah, Demolition Man was like another one from the 90s where they're like, science is cool, but like punching people in the face is cooler.
I'm just trying to remember the name of the film. I think it was War Games. It's like this stupid home PC that looks like an Amstrad crap, like Commodore thing, suddenly becoming conscious. That's War Games, right? But
War Games. I thought War Games was like they built like NORAD or whatever. They built a computer to control the nuclear arsenal, and then it gets out of control because it thinks that it's real, and only Matthew Broderick with his like home PC can stop nuclear Armageddon.
and with that times, you know,
I mean, and his
internet
freaking skills.
Right.
What was the one with the computer falling in love with the cello girl from like downstairs? You know, what happens is the guy drinks. He spills his drink all over the Commodore 64 kind of thing, and then it becomes conscious, and then it falls in love with the cellist because the computer hears somehow. Hears her cello playing from downstairs, and then falls in love. Like Electric Dreams or something like that. It came around the same time as War Games. You're right. War Games was something else. It was the NORAD thing.
That one I don't know. I have not. That one I don't. I'm unfamiliar with. I know Weird Science where they like create.
I remember that. Yeah, woman.
Yeah, the digital woman who can like somehow control space and time. And then I remember Johnny Five too, with Short Circuit, where he's like the war robot and he's running around
Oh Lord,
eating eggs and stuff.
Batteries not included, you know.
Found it. Electric Dreams.
Confused. Yes.
I found the name. Electric Dreams. I was right. Yeah.
I don't know that one.
I went to Google and wrote "computer spill drink fall in love with cellist." That's what I wrote, and then "Electric Dreams" just came up on the top.
Well,
that's the one.
You know what's funny? There's a radio show from way back in the days, like they call it the classic days of radio, or the golden age of radio, but it's called Quiet Please, and there's an episode called The Pathetic Fallacy. Okay. And it's basically about a talking computer that falls in love with its creator. It's just the funniest thing in the world, because I think that episode was back in like the 40s, like the late 40s at the latest, sort of thing. So like, it's just weird that sometimes people even have these concepts, even when from, I don't know, like a practicality standpoint, they don't even have reference material. Like the closest thing that we had to talking machines back then was a device called the Voder, Voder, the Voder. And it was like a old school, I don't want to call it a vocoder, but it was like a machine that could produce like vowel-like sounds. And, it would have this typist there, or, a person that would play this Voder, but they demonstrated it at the World Fair. And I don't know, it's funny to think what people would have thought about a computer, literally, or like a box talking to them before that was even viable as a concept,
Right. Well, Void Armada, we just released a newscast that's about like the Void Armada world, and Ton used a like an automated voice, and it sounds really good. Like, we actually went through, and I think Ton like went through and altered it so it sounded more digital. It sounded more like a digital recording, but when we were listening to it, it sounded really good.
Yeah, it's uncannily too real. This basically, it's a text-to-speech engine I found on the internet, actually. You can go ahead and just check out the same thing. But so I got it to read the news. I mean, if you look at on our Twitter feed, if you look at the news, that is the voice. And yeah, as Toby said, but I made the film. I showed it to our friends here at Modern People, what do you think? And they said, okay, the guy sounds too real. It's just like some guy from Washington, D.C. I mean, he's using an English accent, but still, it's like a BBC News kind of thing. So it just became too real. So we had to make it more artificial so that it kind of sounds more futuristic, like as if an AI is reading the news or something. So it doesn't feel too earthly. And I was so surprised because I've used these things before for other things, and I've never seen. And by the way, on the website, there are like different algorithms, different voices. Only one of them is good. The rest are like they're kind of robotic, compared to that. You can tell that it's not natural, but there's just one of them. And in parentheses, it says like conversational for some reason. It's just as if like it's making conversation, but it's reading the news so well that we didn't really have to hire a voice artist for that. So, so that's pretty interesting.
I pinned a few things up in the top of the chat. You can go check out that news video if you like. And after this call, you can hear the robot voice for yourself. It's come so far, and I know that the advancements with like Stephen Hawking, like his voice box and stuff, is like sort of the start of that advancement in like the robot voice or the text to speech sort of thing. So it's interesting to see where we're at right now. Like, pretty soon, I feel like I saw a preview of Adobe that is going to mimic certain voice. If you feed into it like a voice thing, you'll be able to edit the an audio file using text, so you can go in and like change it up to make it like say like a different word, or to like if like I do a lot of video work, so on the end of like even if it's an interview and they say like a word that's like a little clipped or something, you can like add it back in. But it's also like kind of a intense idea that you'll be able to mimic and copy other people's voices. Like we're stepping into some of these sci-fi realm ourselves. Like we've seen it in like science fiction and science fiction shows and stuff. We're gonna get to the point where we're starting to like blur the lines between what we perceive to be like a human attribute versus like an animatronic or an automated attribute, you know?
Yes, sir.
When you say that, I just remembered Stephen Hawking's, machine. I experienced this really weird thing like ages ago, and I still sometimes tell the story to my friends, and they're like hesitant to believe me. Okay, I'm gonna tell you now, right now, and you judge it. Okay, so it's not like a stupid ghost story or whatever. No, it's not. It's actually about technology. So this was before I went to London. So it must be 1997, I suppose. And I had a close friend, and he worked in like for the summer. He worked in this computer chain in Istanbul. So and then he just like apprenticeship kind of thing. So one day he brings me this thing. Basically, it goes into the serial port of the PC. Mind you, it's not even USB. It's serial port. Okay, remember serial port mice? So something like that. So it goes into serial port, and it's got a cable coming out of it, and there's a ring on top of it. And this is like a proper product, right? It's not even doesn't even look like a prototype. So you put it on your finger, and then you start up a program from a floppy disk, obviously, and it calibrates. Obviously, and then you calibrate it. So basically, what comes out in the screen is that there's like this caterpillar like moving, and then you make it go left or right with your brain. Okay, this sounds insane, but it's true. And at the beginning, I had hard time because you cannot concentrate. And then my friend said, if you move your head a little bit to the left and to the right, you will think left and right. You will collect your thoughts better, and then you will do it better. Because at the beginning, it's really hectic. It just goes left and right constantly, And then eventually, you get the hang of it. And now there are like games on there, like games where only you can go left and right. So there's like a ski game, and then you just play it by looking at the screen with this ring on your finger and thinking left and right. And then a lot of my friends still don't believe me that this happened. And then I give them the example of Stephen Hawking. Like he had this thing where he could actually type letters without moving. So this technology actually exists. But what I remember from that time is that when you keep doing it for a while, like using the computer with your brain, like left and right, I felt like this part of my brain that never worked, like working. So I think this could be an example of what I said at the quite beginning. I mean, some of you missed that. I said that how are we evolved to drive cars? Where does it come from? You can learn how to drive a car and you can go really fast, but how is that coded in our evolution? How can we do it? How can we even? We don't go that fast at all. Like think of especially the racers or whatever, people who go so fast. How can we have that perception in our brains? That we never did that. So I thought it's a little bit like this because we never use our brain in that sort of way to move objects with our brain, whatever. So I felt this part of my brain. Maybe I'm exaggerating this part a little bit, but like this thing there that never worked before. I was maybe getting too hyped. So anyway, I wonder what do you make of this?
No, I want to I've been thinking about those sort of things. Like, for example, using some sort of feedback mechanism, or some sort of assistive technology to like hack the flow state. So, I'm like not certain if you're about it or not, but like there's a flow state that we can all access, we can all get into, and it's like this. If you Google it, there's a diagram that kind of shows the parameters of the flow state, but it's where a task is engaging enough where you want to complete it, but it's not so difficult as to make you quit or, just completely be discouraged. And when you get into this flow state, is beneficial because it's like everything in, your intellect just starts connecting and things just start kind of being put together in a very serendipitous manner. So it's like, yo, if you could incentivize that somehow, or have some means of like tapping into that, or I don't know, just promoting it, making it a thing, it'll be it'd be useful for the person at the other end of the line. But yeah, there's all these aspects of the body that are like dormant in a way, and I think that's one of the next sort of waves, quote unquote, of tech, where like we're already seeing it, where people are getting like they're wearing these devices, and the device is telling them, "Hey, here's a potential issue." But I think that's going to become like an industry onto itself. We're just from a product standpoint, the product isn't really there yet, but the motivation is, and it's just like I'll put it like this: like we're okay right now in society with potentially having like a cancerous cell or some other form of like quote unquote defect within the body that we don't know about. But it's going to come a time where that idea is going to be just absurd and outlandish to people that we just walk around not knowing what's in our bodies. And I bet people would even gamify that somehow. Like they will find a way to make some money off of it, or be like, I've got the youngest body for my age. I have the biggest gap between what my physical age is and what my body age is. Just wait, y'all. Just wait. Like it's coming, man. But absolutely, like those sort of things, like assistive technologies are so they're so good because they can do a lot of really useful things, and often unless you are in need of them, you typically don't know. You typically don't know what's made available to you via like the modern OSs and whatnot that are out there. So yeah, I would just say just explore those assistive technologies. You'd be surprised what it was made available, from like a peripheral standpoint. But yeah, man, explore that shit for real.
I think I really like the way you approached in the sense of flow state. And I suddenly had an epiphany, you're like, that's why, and I think you're right. That is what's built into us. We can get into zone. And, I think that's a great explanation of the question I was thinking today about, like, how can we drive fast cars? Basically, that's what I realized when I first driving cars, first started driving. When I started going, because I said, I'll never go fast. I think a lot of people do. When you first start to drive a car, you say, I will never go fast. I will just go slowly, nicely, and then you just go. So, by the way, interestingly, I want to make a closing. I want to close soon, but before that, I would just want to say this thing, that when I first drove a car, it was in actually Los Angeles. Because I went there for a work, and I had to stay in LA for a while, and I didn't know how to drive cars. And as you know, in LA, without a car, you're doomed. And I was staying in the hotel. The hotel was kind of far from the work, so I had to rent a car anyway. And then I decided to go to Las Vegas, because it's close, like 4-hour drive. And I realized on the way to Las Vegas, I was like speeding, actually just over the speed limit. Me, who has never driven before properly. I mean, I took some extra lessons while I was here before I went, but still I was quite a rookie. And then I rented sort of a really nice car because I was going to Vegas, baby. Anyway, and I found myself actually speeding on that highway. And I slowed down, obviously, eventually. And then I realized that I'm just going to come to what you're going to say. I was in the zone, And also people who ride, especially like big motorbikes, tell me the same thing. We know, like sort of like leaning left and right with the bike, it's like you're in the Zen kind of thing. You're in the zone. It's like it's something else, and there's like a meditative side to all of these things. So probably that's why people sleep on the wheel, because you get in the zone, and then it's like very meditative in a way, and you do it anyway. So, by the way, our time is almost up. Like we have 5 minutes. We had some questions before. And they were about the NFTs. Actually, we want to do a proper AMA later next week, maybe even separate from this show, just about the NFTs. But I think it's this week. It's a little bit too early because we haven't shown the previews of the NFTs themselves yet. So, but next week we'll have so much to talk about the NFTs. So we have. Javier, who is we love him. He's from our own Void Armada community. He's really cool guy, isn't he? We really like him. Yeah, I see hearts coming from Chippy. He's awesome. Also, he's in Portal Heads. I think he came from there, right? He asked 2 questions. I think it's best that we tackled them next week. But one of the questions was about gamification of the project, and we want to talk more about that. But I mean, one thing I want to say is that since the beginning, we started our design in a video game engine, so we wanted them to be game ready from the beginning. So that's one thing. So, and Doğan and I are both game developers. That's our background. One of our backgrounds, actually. I think I want to say we're artists first and then game developers, maybe. But we both have good experience in that. So we can make this happen. And as soon as we started this project, we also started like drawing diagrams and, like opening Excel files and just typing in there, okay, how would this work? How would we gamify this? And we'd love to do that, but it all depends, as, if you've ever dabbled in game design before, you'd know how difficult it is. You just need a crew, basically. You need a team with you to help you with that. So, but that's the plan. We want to. And that's all I can say right now. But we can go into more detail about that later, for sure. So we have 2 more minutes. Toby, can you do the closing? And thank you for listening, all of you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this has been the first episode of Sci-Fi and Tonic, and we're going to be back every Friday at the same time to talk about science fiction, to talk about space, and all things science-y, fiction-y, adventure-y. But we are a NFT project launching on Fantom, Void Armada. Ton, Dawn, and Chippy are the primary people behind the project. Chippy is the community manager. Ton and Dawn are the designers, developers, and creators of it. I'm Toby Kurtz. I'm the running social media for Void Armada, and I pinned some tweets up there. You can follow us on Twitter. You can join our Discord if you're interested in that. We're having our fleet preview on Monday where we're going to unveil. We have a pretty sick trailer, actually, that's coming up. Void Armada is primarily like a story-driven project, so that's going to be a big element. So we have a trailer coming up on Monday that is super sick, created by Ton and Dawn. And then on Tuesday, we're going to have our full fleet reveal of the NFTs and the ships themselves. So, but stay tuned for next Friday. The space is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to back next week for another episode of Sci-Fi and Tonic. It's been great to have you all here with us. Thanks for joining the conversation, And hopefully we'll talk to you soon. Thanks all.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Appreciate it.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks,
for
y'all.
joining.
It was cool, man.
Thanks for the contribution.